What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. And there's a player in this upcoming NFL draft that I think the Kansas City Chiefs would be absolutely silly to pass up on if he's there at 31. We'll talk about who that is right after this. Ladies and gentlemen of the Chiefs Kingdom, the NFL draft is a little over 70 hours away at the time of recording this video. It's kind of crazy to think that we're that close to finding out who is going to be the newest Kansas City Chief. It's coming this Thursday night, the first round of the NFL draft, right around the corner. All of that work, all of the process has finally led up to this point where we're going to be talking about who is going to be playing for the Kansas City Chiefs for the next 3 to 4 years or 4 to 5 years. And there's been a lot of talk about what the Kansas City Chiefs should do at 31 with that first round pick. Now, I've been pretty loud to this point in the offseason about how happy I've been with what the Kansas City Chiefs have done. You know, coming off that bad Super Bowl loss, I feel like there was a little bit of a freak out period there, you know, even from myself, really, if I'm being honest. But as I've kind of, let my mind clear, moved past the Super Bowl loss, I've looked at this roster, I've looked at what the Kansas City Chiefs have done in free agency, and I said, you know what? They've done a really good job plugging a lot of holes. I don't think there's a huge need to overreact here to what happened in the Super Bowl, but there's a few things that need some tweaking. And I think the Chiefs have made some of those tweaks in free agency. They went out and plugged holes everywhere. They added a cornerback, too, that can actually play NFL snaps. They've signed a left tackle, Jalen Moore, who I have a lot of confidence in. Andy Reid seems to have a lot of confidence in from his presser the other day. I just really like what the Chiefs have done in free agency, and I think it's put them in a position where, they can kind of do whatever they want in this draft. They can sit back, relax, take best player available at just about every single pick. Now, of course, that's not to say there aren't areas in which they need to add. I think most of us agree they probably need to come out of this draft with a starting caliber running back. They need to add probably a couple of defensive linemen, but they're not necessarily pigeonholed into taking any of those positions with their first round pick. They could go any number of directions, and that's what is most exciting about this draft, in my opinion. I think it's going to be relatively stress-free as long as the Kansas City Chiefs don't do anything too crazy, right? Knock on wood. But guys, throughout this process, I think there's been a lot of players that have seen their stock rise and fall. And one player whose stock has kind of fallen a little bit, and I don't really agree with it, is, of course, Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden. This is a guy that coming into this college season, this past college football season, he was a consensus top wide receiver in this draft class. He was right there neck and neck with Tet McMillan. And I still think he's probably wide receiver 1 or 2 in this draft. I think a lot of people are overthinking this. Now, granted, disclaimer, I am a Missouri fan. I'm a little bit biased. I'll come out and admit that right now. I obviously cover the Missouri Tigers on this channel. That's part of why I came up with the name Show Me Football. There's a little bit of trivia for you if you weren't already able to put that together. But guys, Luther Burden, this is a player that I think is a first round talent in this draft. Absolutely. He is a top wide receiver in this draft. His stock has fallen quite a bit, and I don't agree with it, but I think that it has made it to where the Kansas City Chiefs have a real chance to select him at 31 on Thursday night. And I'll tell you what, if he's on the board and the Kansas City Chiefs are to pass up on him, I will never let Brett Veach live it down, especially if he ends up going one pick later to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, let's talk a little bit, before I get into some of my feelings there, let's get into why exactly Luther Burden's stock has fallen a little bit. So, for one, I think people look at what his production was in 2024 and they say, what happened? Why was he not the star receiver that he kind of was made out to be during the 2024 season. He obviously came into last season being a consensus top receiver, didn't really put up numbers like a top receiver, though. I think the biggest reason for that, if you watch his film, if you watched Missouri Tigers football games, there was a big step back in quarterback play. Missouri quarterback Brady Cook was inaccurate. He was a inconsistent decision maker. He left the pocket a lot and felt invisible pressure, which forced him to not even look Luther Burden's way. A lot of times when he was wide open, if you go and look at Luther Burden's film, there's a lot of times where he's open, doesn't even get a look from the quarterback, doesn't get the ball thrown to him. And I think that was the biggest reason for a step back in production for Luther Burden in 2024. The offense just wasn't quite right for the Missouri Tigers. And I think Luther Burden unfortunately suffered from that, but it's not a reflection of who he is as a player. If you go and look at what he did in 2023, he obviously showed what he can do as long as he gets good quarterback play, right? He's an elite level talent. He can make guys miss like no other. The comp that I've seen the most for him is Deebo Samuel. And that's because he has that ability to make guys miss in the open field. He's a little bit of a running back with the ball in his hands, just kind of that running style. Makes it really hard for defenders to bring him down. You can go and look and see tons of highlight plays from him where there's 3 or 4 defenders around him and he still finds a way to get around them or make his way to the end zone. He's a very special guy with the ball in his hands. And he's also a guy that I think, you can manufacture those touches for, but he can also do a lot of wide receiver things. I think he's a better route runner than what he gets credit for. People say he's not a great route runner. Could his route tree use, some refining and expanding? Sure. You can say that for a lot of wide receivers coming out of the NFL draft. There's not very many that are totally polished route runners coming out of the NFL draft. There's very few of those guys every single year, if any at all. Take Xavier Worthy, for example, who the Kansas City Chiefs just took in last year's draft. He did not come in knowing how to run a full route tree. He still doesn't know how to run a full route tree, but the hope is that eventually he will get there. I think Luther Burden's probably already ahead of where Xavier Worthy was, at this point, but that's besides the point. Luther Burden, he is electric with the ball in his hands, and I think he does a lot of the stuff that Andy Reid likes to do with his rookie receivers. He likes to run those gadget plays, those screen plays, and although sometimes they do drive us nuts, that's just what Andy likes to do. But Luther Burden is the perfect guy to run that with, especially, if you're looking to get him involved as a rookie. And Brett Veach also mentioned in his presser the other day that he would like to find another weapon for Patrick Mahomes and a guy specifically that can return punts and kicks. Luther Burden's your guy for that. He returned punts at Missouri, and he was pretty darn good at it for most of the time. Now, another criticism I see of Luther Burden a lot of the time is, he didn't show up in big games. That's not necessarily true. Sure, he got a lot of the focus from the defense in big games, but he was still able to find a way to make an impact. And also, the thing that I pay more attention to is the fact that he came up in the biggest moments, even in those big games, despite the fact he may not have made a huge impact earlier on in that game. Look at the Oklahoma game from 2024, for example. That was a game in which Luther Burden was relatively quiet for most of it. But down the stretch, in the biggest moment, when Mizzou needed a couple plays in order to get back in that game, Luther Burden came with a pair of massive catches. Florida, the 4th and 17 play from 2023. That's probably one of the most famous plays in Mizzou football history now. Luther Burden comes up big in huge moments, and I think he's a big game player. He makes big time plays and big time moments, and that's something that you can't necessarily coach. It's not something that you can necessarily teach a guy. Some people have also commented on the fact that he has small hands. I don't really care about that. It would be more of an issue if he had a drops problem in college. He had a really low drop percentage, so therefore small hands, not really a concern. I think people are overthinking this when it comes to Luther Burden. He is an elite level prospect in this draft. Again, I think, he's electric with the ball in his hands, and he gets Deebo Samuel comps a lot, but I also would kind of compare him to Jamar Chase a little bit. But that said, Luther Burden has a little bit better speed than Jamar Chase, but I think there's a lot of things that you can look at them and see the similarities. They are both shifty players. I think Luther Burden does have the potential to eventually play some outside receiver. He's more of a slot guy, which I think is fine. if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, because you're going to need some Rashee Rice insurance. And I do think that eventually they can coexist. And you could probably keep Rashee Rice in the slot and use Luther Burden as a Z wide receiver, or use him on the outside a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think the Kansas City Chiefs need another viable option at wide receiver. And while most people probably wouldn't necessarily spend the first pick in the draft for the Kansas City Chiefs on a wide receiver, it's not that big of a need. Keep in mind, Hollywood Brown's only on a 1-year deal. Xavier Worthy is a smaller guy. He's an injury risk. Rashee Rice also coming off injury, also may be suspended starting next season. Wide receiver is still a sneaky need. And again, that's why it's such a great thing that the Kansas City Chiefs have put themselves in a position to where they can take best player available. Luther Burden, if he's there at 31, I think there's a pretty good chance he's going to be the best player available. And the Kansas City Chiefs need to snatch him up. They should run to the podium with the card with his name on it, because I will tell you what, if Luther Burden gets passed up on by the Kansas City Chiefs at pick 31 and he's there, and the Eagles take him one pick later, I will not feel bad at all when the Kansas City Chiefs meet the Eagles in the Super Bowl again next season, and the result is the exact same, because the Kansas City Chiefs wanted to take a project left tackle instead with their first round pick. I know a lot of you guys like Josh Simmons. I know a lot of you guys want to see the Chiefs take a left tackle. I personally don't. I think this is a weak left tackle class, and people are wanting the Chiefs to not only target Josh Simmons, but even potentially trade up for him. I don't want to see that. He's coming off a torn patellar tendon injury, guys. That's a massive, devastating injury, especially for a big offensive lineman. The history of big guys sustaining a torn patellar tendon injury and coming back from it is not great. I have a lot of concerns about Josh Simmons. I think people are acting as if he's this slam dunk, number one pick, home run number one pick. And I just don't see it that way. But you know who is a slam dunk, home run, first round talent, probably the best player available if he's there at 31. That's Luther Burden. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs need to make next year's team as good as possible. A pick like Josh Simmons doesn't help you next year. I think it needs to be said again that Jalen Moore is going to get his shot next year to be the Kansas City Chiefs' number one left tackle. And they signed him to a 2-year, $30 million deal. Like, he's going to get a chance to be the left tackle next year. And I think people have already kind of forgotten that. There's no one that you're drafting that's going to start day one at left tackle in this year's draft class. And that's just the reality. But before I go any further, guys, I want to talk about a new app that is coming out, Penalty Verdict. If you're tired of people blaming the refs for the Kansas City Chiefs' ability to win football games, then you're going to want to check this out. Let's take a look. Whether you're sick of seeing your team constantly get screwed over by the refs, tired of hearing about how your team only wins because of the refs, or simply just desire fair play and accountability, then Penalty Verdict is the perfect app for you. Penalty Verdict is a new app that allows football fans to vote on penalty calls in real time on both NFL and college football games. With Penalty Verdict, you'll be able to engage with a community of football fans who desire accuracy and transparency in officiating. And not only does Penalty Verdict allow you to vote on and discuss penalties in real time, but you'll also have access to data and statistics on specific referees. And you can even see what your favorite team's win-loss record is with that referee heading the crew. You can use this information to make educated guesses on who's going to win each game, and earn even more XP, which can be used to place wagers and climb up leaderboards on Penalty Verdict. Unlock the next dimension of sports by engaging with real-time polling of referees, players, and teams. And lastly, view data-driven insights to have informed discussions about the games. While Penalty Verdict is still in the development phase, we would love to hear your guys' feedback on what features you want to see in the app for next football season. Invite your friends to join and share Penalty Verdict today, and follow Penalty Verdict on social media. So guys, that is Penalty Verdict. It is an awesome resource if you're a football fan, if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan that is tired of people accusing the Chiefs of needing the refs' help to win. That's going to be an app that you're going to want to have next season in order to expand on kind of why the Kansas City Chiefs are able to win the football games and why it's not because of the refs. You're going to be able to track referee statistics, team statistics. It's really cool. Link is going to be in the bio if you want to sign up for the wait list for that. They want to get your guys' feedback on what you want to see as far as features for the app for next football season. So go ahead, hit the link down in my bio. I would really appreciate it. I really want you guys to go check this out. I'm certainly going to be using it next football season. But anyway, back to the video topic. So bottom line, guys, I want to see the Kansas City Chiefs make this football team as good as possible for the year of 2025. And I think the best way to do that is to draft football players that are going to be instant impact next year, just putting the best roster together talent wise. And I think, if you were to draft a player like Luther Burden in the first round with that 31st overall pick, you're going to put yourself in a really good position to have an offense again that is truly capable of scoring 35, 40 points a game. And I want the Chiefs to get back to that. I want this team to have an explosive offense again. I want them to have no shortage of offensive weapons for Patrick Mahomes. That is an area in which they've lacked in the past couple of years. Veach kind of moved off his promise of continually surrounding Patrick Mahomes with weapons. But he could kind of reverse course again and add an elite weapon to this offense. Luther Burden, a guy that I think would be a perfect fit for the Chiefs offense that Andy Reid would love to utilize, especially with all the gadget play sort of stuff. And I think he has the chance to develop into a really, really good wide receiver, potentially a wide receiver one even. And that makes decisions on guys like Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy a little bit easier in the future, knowing that you would still have someone like Luther Burden on his rookie contract, filling those needs before they become needs, essentially. So I want to see the Chiefs get that explosive offense again. I would not be mad at all if they decided that taking an explosive wide receiver with their first round pick was the best way to build the best possible team for next year. And that still leaves the Chiefs with three more picks in the top 100 to address needs like running back and defensive tackle and defensive end. And I just think the Chiefs are in a great spot right now. Let's not overthink this. If Luther Burden's available at 31, I want to see the Chiefs take him. But I definitely want to hear from you guys down in the comments below. Do you want the Kansas City Chiefs to take Luther Burden with their first round pick if he's there at 31? We'll definitely be interested to hear what you guys have to say on this one, what the consensus is in the comments. So definitely leave your thoughts down below. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. Make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com, arrowheadaddict.com for more. Last but not least, you can also follow me on Twitter at showmefb. That's all I got for you guys in this one. I will see you all in the next one. And as always, go Chiefs.